Hi, Mika. Thanks for your email. Thanks for all the information you gave, and thanks for telling me that the corrections are helpful and not heartbreaking. All right, so let's get this back to you since your exam is this Sunday. Hopefully, you'll have time to write us another one before then. Let's see what this one is about. Online communication, advantages, disadvantages. Let's see what you said. Experts throughout both the developed and developing world have debated if online communication in a company has more benefits as over its detrimental impact. Although there are some negative impacts, careful, impacts, not great. Try to use some different words, okay? Although there are some negatives, that's even easier. Personally, I believe that online communication has greater advantages than its disadvantages. Fine. This essay will discuss, now again, look at this, create advantages, disadvantages, and then again, advantages, disadvantages. So you need to have some cohesion here, okay? This essay will discuss both viewpoints using examples from the IMF, Oxford University, and Bank of China to demonstrate points and prove arguments. Does that help? So you need to try using other types of cohesion because as you probably know, cohesion is not just linking words, but it's also ways we substitute, okay, synonyms and other things like pronouns. So these all aid in creating cohesion, okay? All right, let's keep going. On the one hand, so you said the advantages, okay, fine. On the one hand, there is ample evidence that that the advent of the internet, always the internet. So the advent of the internet and online communication brought us an undoubtful convenience. It's a little awkward, undoubtful, and brought us undoubtful convenience. How about this? There is ample evidence that the advent of the internet and online communication undoubtedly brought us convenience. I would have found that much more natural. The central advantages behind this are twofold. Firstly, online communication saves a huge budget. You can't save a huge budget. You see, lexically, this feels wrong. So you could say saves companies money. So online communication saves companies money. Okay? For instance, people can join work meetings without the from anywhere in the world as long as you are connected to a solid internet. Recent research by the IMF showed that large corporations around the world saved an average of this would have been easier if you had just said saved an average 66% of the travel budget. Otherwise, you have to rephrase this. Saved an average of 2/3 of the travel budget. And I don't like sentences that have too many ofs, or ins and, prepositional phrases. Okay. Secondly, online communication made a continued company's operation possible even during pandemic. Okay, grammar. Secondly, online communication made continuous operation of companies, IES, possible even during the pandemic. A recent report from Oxford University demonstrated that 70% of companies, and this should be plural, continue to have online meetings using online tools such as Zoom and Microsoft Teams when many places were in lockdown by the recent COVID-19 pandemic. They couldn't have done it without online communication systems. Therefore, it is conclusively clear that online communication is greatly beneficial to companies. Okay. On the other hand, there are some risks related to online meetings. It heavily relies on stable internet connection, If there is a we call these a power outage, really. If there is a power outage or faulty devices, it automatically affects the communication. Recent news showed that one of the largest banks, Bank of China, capital B, lost billions of dollars due to the fact that the internet was cut off during the most important online meeting. Thus, it should not be forgotten that online meetings have some disadvantages. Okay. In conclusion, from the arguments and examples given, although there are some negative points, I firmly believe that online communication is one of the most... What does this mean? I'm not really sure. Development of modern technology. Innovative. Is that what you're trying to say? I'm really not sure. It is predicted that for companies across the world, online communication will increasingly grow in popularity. Okay. So let's take a look again at this task. Online communication is more common than face-to-face meetings. Do the advantages outweigh the disadvantages? So what are they really asking you to talk about here? This is, Mika, the most important thing to do as soon as you get the task in your hand, to make sure that you absolutely understand the question, because a lot of times the questions look very simplistic, but they in fact are not. So what a lot of people are tempted to do in this particular essay is they are tempted to talk about the positives of online communication, the advantages of online communication. That's kind of what they're asking, but it's not entirely what they're asking. They're telling us that we rely on this and we use this a lot more than face-to-face. Okay, so there's this trend, there's this shift happening. And is this shift towards this kind of communication, away from this communication, does that have advantages? Does that have disadvantages? That we talk a lot more through email, through video calls, and all of this. We do a lot more of that than we do face-to-face meetings. Does that have disadvantages? Does that have advantages? And which one outweighs the other? So this is the way you kind of need to approach this. I thought that you, and not just you, I would have to say that a lot of students do this, is you really just approached it as the, like, kind of in a vacuum, like the positives of online communication and the negatives of it. But it's really not just that simple, okay? Remember that you're supposed to be talking about this within the scope of, well, with more of this, we are now leaving this behind us. Does that have positives or does that have disadvantages? So you need to have some sort of reference to face-to-face meetings in your paragraphs, even if it's just to, at some point, make some sort of a comparison. Okay? Like, for example, you could say that, oh, online communication allows us to do X, Y, Z. This could not be possible with online meetings. Okay? Or this, gives it a distinct advantage over online meetings. Something like that. And then when you're talking about the disadvantages of this trend and that we're doing more and more of this, then you could say, well, this is a real problem with online meetings that we wouldn't have if we continued to have face-to-face meetings. Okay? So that's kind of what I want to see here. I didn't really see it. Like I said, this is a problem I think a lot of people have with this essay. So it's not just you, believe me. Is it a huge deal? Well, given the score that you need, it might be the difference between the higher score or the lower score. Okay, it might be part of it. But more so than that, I also want to talk to you about your grammar. You could see that there were consistent grammatical errors in here. I had to correct frequently. And what do I want to tell you about your mistakes? They were not mistakes in higher level grammar. They were mistakes in kind of basic grammar. And so these are the kinds of mistakes that will keep you from getting that score that you need. Okay? So I want you to think about all of this as well. It was like, I almost want to say it was like careless errors. But they weren't the kinds of things that impeded communication. they were the kinds of mistakes that would just keep you from getting into one of those top 3 band scores. That's what I want you to understand. Okay, so that's my feedback about this. I hope that is helpful. I want to take a look now at your task 1. So let's see about your task 1 now. School subjects in Germany. 168 words. Well, no, not 168 words because you had to, wait, let me see. 139. Ouch. Okay. So let's talk about what that means. You may or may not know that you are no longer penalized for having below 150 words. Okay, that used to be the case. They don't do that anymore, essentially because it's a double penalty. Because if you're writing under 150 words, then it's pretty clear you're not going to do well in task achievement. Because to do well in task achievement, you do have to have a certain number of words to develop, to describe, etc. So what they've done is they've stopped having this 150 minimum, because we used to lower one band score if you were like under 141 words, and that was like a double penalty because you had already been penalized in task achievement. So that's no more. But what I can tell you is that if you need a 7 and higher with so few words, it's probably going to be difficult to do. Now, I wanted to tell you about this one. There's not a lot of information here, and I find these to be particularly difficult because, IELTS students are so used to having lots of information that they have to condense and they have to synthesize into a brief report. And then all of a sudden with these, it's kind of like, okay, well, now how do I do the opposite? How do I extend? How do I, make this into something meaningful and emphasizing lots of stuff when I only have 7 pieces of information? Well, it's possible. We'll talk about it. First, let me see what you wrote, and then we'll get into all those wonderful, wonderful details. Okay, so this pie chart illustrates the proportion of 7 school subjects, you named them, good, divided by the popularity in Germany in 2017. What happened here? Okay, let's try this again. This pie chart illustrates the proportion of 7 school subjects by popularity in Germany in 2017. Full stop, you're done. I know that doesn't help you because you just said, Ellen, you told me that I have to extend my words. Don't worry, we'll talk about how to do that. Overall, in Germany, the most popular subjects, PE and history together, accounted for almost over half of the proportion. Third and fourth popular subjects were math and physics. They together comprised of 1/3 of the pie chart, whereas IT was the least popular subject. All right, so we have a couple of problems here. First of all, this isn't an overview. And it's not an overview because the overview is supposed to tell us the biggest thing, and that's it. It's not supposed to have any data. Even when you talk about over half of the proportion, that's data. We don't want that. So what you could have said here, there are a handful of things you could have said. Let me give you some suggestions for what an overview on this would have been. So overall, PE had the highest proportion, whereas IT had the least. Overall, PE and history accounted for the 2 most popular subjects. Overall, 4 subjects, namely PE, history, physics, and math, accounted for the largest proportion of popularity. So any one of those would have been an appropriate overview. Okay? Anything other than that is questionable. Okay? So, then you signposted it appropriately, but then you attached it in the same paragraph with this. So this is not appropriate. It makes it seem even less so like an overview. My suggestion to you would be one of 2 things. Either attach the overview to your introduction paragraph or give it its own paragraph, and that's it. Then after that, you should have 2 paragraphs for your details. Okay? All right, so let's continue. The third and fourth most popular subjects were math and physics. They together comprise, comprise is a wrong word. Comprise is a tricky word. Everybody uses it wrong. Believe me, even native speakers, it's a disaster. So, comprise means is made up of. So, it doesn't work here, okay? So, what you could have said is, let's see, they together accounted for, oh, you already said accounted for. Shoot, let's find another word. They together made up 1/3 of the pie chart. Again, it's not an overview. We said that. Now, this should be one sentence because this on its own is a fragment. You need to put it together with this. So they together made up 1/3 of the pie chart, whereas IT was the least popular subject. All right, let's keep going. Now, the first of all here is not really so appropriate. Let's go back. So let's assume that, you know what, I'm just going to do it for you because I think it's just going to make your life so much easier, Mika. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. Wait. Okay, so this is what I'm suggesting. I'm suggesting this. Wait, what's going on? There we go. Okay, so I'm suggesting this, first of all. Obviously, you would have changed around the words, but in terms of paragraphing, this is what I'm telling you that I think would be better. And then the third and fourth most popular subjects, let me just do it because really, most popular subjects were maths and physics. They together made up 1/3 of the pie chart, whereas IT was the least popular subject. Fine. Then you're getting into details here. So, oops. The most popular subject, PE, comma, had 22.9%. The second most popular subject, which was history, it's not a decrease. There's no decreasing here because there's no action. This is not a dynamic chart. This is a static chart. You're probably wondering, what does that mean? Well, a dynamic one is a chart that shows change over time. So in other words, you've got the figure in January, you've got the figure in March, April, etc. That would be dynamic. A static chart is when they literally just show you like a moment in time. Okay, so there's no change, there's no progression, nothing. So what that means is that the language you have to use is different. You're going to use the language of comparison in a static chart like this. You're not going to use the language of increasing, decreasing, declining, increasing, whatever. Okay, so the second most popular subject, which was history, had slightly less. Okay, that's a word of comparison. Oops. They had only, all right, that's a little awkward. You know what? Let's clean this up a little. The most popular subject, P, had 22.9%. The second most popular subject, which was history, had slightly less than. And now, again, I want a little better cohesion here. I would have said this here. A difference of only 0.5. Similarly, the third and fourth subjects, maths and physics, comma, also had a mere difference of 1.4, 19.5, and 18.1 respectively. So the rest of the subjects, biology, geography, and IT, comma, here, marked less than 20% of the total proportion. Okay, so there was so much more you could have done here. Let me show you. Right. So here when you, let's see. Here you talked about this, right? You could have said something here like, thirdly, the third and fourth subjects, maths and physics, also had a mere difference of da-da-da. Fine. So together, the four most popular subjects accounted for nearly, there he is. Okay. Okay. So again, you're just kind of linking them all together. You're adding a little information. You're giving it a little more emphasis. So this is the kind of thing you want to do. And then here, the remaining three subjects, actually you already said something similar, so let's forget that. The rest of the subjects, okay, this is fine. Marked less than 20% of the total proportion. Now this is, you had so much to say here and you didn't take advantage of this. So specifically, I don't know, I'm just going to pretend. Biology had a figure of 7.1. The next least popular, I'm assuming it's geography. 1 point, what is it? It's not even, 0.5 less. There we go. .4%. The least popular subject overall, IT, had half the popularity of biology at 3.7%. And then there's something really cool that you can do here. You don't always need to write a conclusion, but sometimes some of these answers really kind of lend themselves to this. So this is one, because you don't really have a lot to talk about. So you could say in summary, let's see. Sorry, I'm not talking because I'm just thinking. Forgive me. In Germany. PE and IT. Okay, so now what I want to do, obviously I didn't correct all of this, but let's see where you are with your word count now after something like this. Let's see. 201. Okay, now obviously I would have changed a lot of this stuff up here. I already told you why, so you probably wouldn't get up to 201 words, but it's definitely a lot richer. It's a lot more fully developed. It's emphasizing things, it's emphasizing the differences. One of the things that I want you to remember is that there's this really kind of fine line you have to play with here in task one. On the one hand, you have to present the information so that the person reading this can visualize what you're looking at, even if he or she does not have it in front of him or her. But at the same time, you don't want to make it mechanical. So you don't want it to sound like, okay, well, this was the first popular at this percent. This was the second popular at this percent. This was the third popular at this percent. That would be terrible. That would be mechanical. Okay? So what you want to do is you want to make connections and you want to emphasize those connections, the differences, the similarities. All right, this was a really long correction. I didn't mean it to be that long. But I hope that information is helpful. I know your exam is coming up, and so we really, really want you to be as best prepared for it as you can be. Let's see if you can get more essays to us by then. You should be able to, I hope, right? Okay, looking forward to it. So good luck.